On October 7th, 2025, Officer Grant Victorious of the North Richland Hills Police Department noted
October 7th, 2025, what starts as a routine traffic stop in Texas quickly turns into a controversial arrest that raises serious legal questions. One officer, one driver, and a decision that would later come back to haunt the entire department.
on the roadway. The interaction that followed was captured on both officer dashcam and body-worn camera.
Name and badge number.
Noticing this police department, Officer Victorious, you got your driver's license on you?
Name and badge number.
Do you have your driver's license on you?
The officer approaches the vehicle and immediately begins questioning the driver. But instead of a normal interaction, the driver starts asking for accountability. Name, badge number, and justification, setting the tone for what's about to unfold.
Okay.
Have you been in North Richland Hills?
The offensive committee was in North Richland Hills.
Oh, what's it?
Yeah.
Is it on dash? Did you record it?
Yeah, all recorded.
Excellent.
Yep. It's all
Body
recorded.
camera on?
Yep, sure is.
Why is the red light on?
See the little recording button? That means it's on.
Excellent. And you realize you had your brights on in my eyeball.
Okay.
Just scratch that cornea.
That's right.
So your brights into my eyeball posing a hazard.
Anything illegal
And
in the car that you know
after I
about?
asked you-
No? Okay.
After I asked you, and you
All right, same
said
vehicle.
you would. Yes, sir.
Do you need to record?
I know. Cool. And what was your badge number again?
As the conversation continues, the driver begins challenging the reason for the stop. He questions the delay, the location, and whether the officer actually had a valid reason. And now, the tension starts to rise.
So why didn't you pull me over?
When it occurred, I pulled you over.
I was driving straight.
We're not going to argue it out here. I got your video camera crossing the solid white
Got
line.
my license.
Not right now. You're detained. You're not free to go.
I'm detained?
You're not free to go.
Okay. What's the reasonable particular suspicion of an actual crime, not a traffic violation?
Northwest 333, negative good.
You detained me, right? Or am I free to go?
Simple, thank you. You're not free to go.
No.
So you're in a traffic stop right now?
Detained?
Correct.
Right? Correct.
The officer makes one thing very clear. This is no longer a casual stop. The driver is officially detained and not free to leave. But the driver keeps pushing, asking the one question officers don't like hearing.
Detained.
So disregarding the
This is just
traffic
a
control
forfeit,
device?
yes, so,
Okay.
yeah, let's just
Okay,
make
yes.
sure we're on the same page. And
You're not free to leave.
The difference between the
You are not free to
detainment
leave.
and a traffic stop.
Okay. You are not free to leave.
There you go.
Can we make that
Thank
clear?
you.
Cool. Thank you. Please don't leave. I don't want to charge you with evading.
Why
Can we
would
agree
I
on
leave?
that?
I have nothing to run from.
All right, cool. No weapons in the car?
Nope.
Okay. Nothing illegal in the car to know about?
I don't know how to answer any more questions, but go ahead.
If you don't want to answer,
Take it.
if you don't want to answer questions, that's fine.
Are you driving my ticket or?
I'm waiting for dispatch to come back with your return.
So you have 20 minutes.
Okay.
Sometime it's up.
Cool. Sounds good. We can sit here and stare at each other for 20 minutes if you like.
Did it upset you that I asked you to tell my...
What follows is an awkward standoff. Both sides standing firm, neither backing down. And with every passing second, the situation becomes more uncomfortable.
Right. You're up.
And then I pulled back up and bam, right there they are again.
You might give me your right hand on the steering wheel, please. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Whatever makes you feel safe.
I appreciate that.
Back with what?
I'm just waiting for dispatch right now to come back with your return.
With my return?
Now I gotta run your driver's license, make sure it's valid.
Yeah, you do that in your computer system.
Well, I gotta go through dispatch. I'm out here with you.
Took my license, went back to the vehicle.
Okay.
Legally, I hand over my license.
Sorry?
Legally, I'm going to hand you my license.
Well, if you wanted to go down that route, that would have been a different ballgame. So I appreciate you handing me your license.
The officer's tone begins to shift. What started as routine now feels more controlled, more deliberate. And you can sense something is about to change.
They took my license back.
No. So you committed a violation. Okay.
So you claim.
So you're not free to go. Okay. And that's where we're at now.
Allegedly. Anyway.
Hey, innocence of proven guilty, right? So
Yep.
That's where we're at.
So, yeah.
That's where we're at.
A little bit of a retaliatory stop, but, you know.
Okay.
But you literally followed me.
What
After
says
blinding me
what says
twice.
we're not? Okay. However you want to put it. Okay.
Followed me every which way. Why was that?
I can patrol anywhere in the city.
Oh, absolutely. You're at about 10 minutes.
Awesome. Right on time. Northfield 333 fast. You can get a double A one time to my location, please. You probably need more like 7,900. 1015.
Backup is called to the scene. A clear sign that this situation is escalating beyond a simple traffic stop. And now, things are about to take a serious turn.
Alright, turn around. Put your phone turn around. Turn around. You drop it in there. Everything's recorded. You are under arrest. Disregarding traffic control device.
Officer
Without much warning, the situation explodes. The driver is ordered out of the vehicle. And just like that, he's placed under arrest for a minor traffic violation.
Code. Contrary to popular belief, most offenses, regardless of how trivial or victimless they may be, still authorize officers to make an arrest, particularly when the offense is committed in their presence. Section 543.001 of the Transportation Code expressly authorizes an officer to make a warrantless arrest when a citizen is found committing a violation of Subtitle C. Now, since Section 544.004 is part of Subtitle C, the Transportation Code itself gives an officer the statutory authority to arrest for that violation when it is committed in the officer's presence. Furthermore, in the 2001 case of Atwater versus City of Lago Vista, the Supreme Court held that the Fourth Amendment does not forbid a warrantless custodial arrest for a minor criminal offense punishable only by a fine so long as there is probable cause. In addition, Section 543.004 of the Transportation Code makes issuance of a written notice to appear mandatory for a limited set of specified offenses. And it also clarifies those are the only offenses for which issuance is mandatory. Disregarding a traffic control device under Section 544.004 is not one of the offenses listed in Section 543.004, which means the Transportation Code does not force a written notice to appear for this particular charge in the same way that it does for offenses like speeding. Therefore, it is likely that a court would view Travis's arrest as technically lawful. However, that does not mean that every custodial arrest for a minor traffic violation is consistent with the spirit of how Texas law expects these encounters to be handled. Chapter 543 lays out a clear notice to appear framework that is designed to resolve routine traffic misdemeanors through a written notice and a release from custody rather than a full booking process. When an officer arrests a citizen for a misdemeanor traffic violation and does not take the citizen before a magistrate, then Section 543.003 requires the officer to issue a a written notice to appear. The point of a legal framework involving a cite and release format is to avoid unnecessary arrests for minor violations. Additionally, Section 311.17 of the North Richland Hills Police Department's General Orders outlines the protocol for arrests involving Class C misdemeanor charges. Now, while this policy does acknowledge an officer's discretionary authority to make an arrest based on such a low-level crime, it also highly discourages arresting citizens based on class.
Now comes the real question. Was this arrest actually justified, or was it an abuse of authority? Because under Texas law, the answer isn't as simple as it seems.
Here, there does not appear to be any greater so-called investigatory or legal objective that influenced Officer Victorious's decision to arrest Travis, and there is a strong argument to be made that the arrest did not comply with the intent of the department policy, if nothing else. Before we continue the interaction, I want to give a big thanks to the sponsor of this episode, Incogni. If you've ever watched one of these interactions and thought, man, I don't want random people knowing where I live, here's the uncomfortable truth. A lot of the time, they already can. Not because you posted it, but because there are entire businesses that vacuum up your name, address, phone number, email, relatives, and other details, then publish and sell it through people search sites and data broker databases. That's why I use Incogni. It's a hands-off service that goes after these companies on your behalf and gets your info removed. You create an account, share the minimum info needed to find your profiles, give a one-time authorization, and Incogni handles the removal requests and the follow-ups. And the feature I really like is custom removals, which comes with their unlimited plan. If you find a specific page exposing your info that isn't part of their automated network, you can drop the link into your dashboard, and a dedicated privacy expert will work on getting it taken down if it's eligible. Incogni is also the first and only personal data removal service to be independently verified by Deloitte, which matters in a space that's full of sketchy promises and shifty businesses. Right now, Incogni is offering members of the ATA community a 60% discount on an annual plan when you use code THEAUDIT at the link below. Data doesn't just disappear on its own. If you don't take it back, someone else will. Thanks again to Incogni for sponsoring today's episode.
Correct. It's an arrestable offense in the state of Texas, sir.
After the arrest, things get even more questionable. The officers begin searching the vehicle, but legally, there are strict limits on what they're allowed to do.
Your headphones in the car? Yes. Take it off. And roll my window up and walk my vehicle. Your car's gonna get towed. Alright. Let's walk this way. Alright, stand right here for a second. Spread your feet. Correct. You can't see that in the hallway. Really hoping you find something, but you won't. We'll check everybody before we go in the car now. Do you want this with you, or do you want this in the car? Actually, just give you permission to search. Okay, well, I'm searching the incidental arrest. Okay. Hey, Travis. Travis. Hey, the jail's not going to take this. We're going to leave it in your car, okay? Spread your feet. Spread your feet. I mean, if you bring it with you, they're just going to throw it away at the jail, so it's up to you. This way? We're going to see right now until you get you in the car. We grab my phone as well. We'll grab it for you. Alright, so you see?
After After placing Travis in the back of the patrol car, the officers mute their body cams and decide to search Travis's vehicle.
With cameras muted, the search continues. And this is where things become even more concerning, because what happens off audio often raises the biggest questions.
Incident to an arrest is typically regarded as an acceptable exception to the warrant requirement. The scope of such a search is limited. In the 2009 case of Arizona versus Gant, the Supreme Court held that officers may search a vehicle incident to a recent occupant's arrest only when the arrestee is unsecured and within reaching distance of the passenger compartment at the time of the search, or when it is reasonable to believe that the vehicle contains evidence of the offense of arrest. Once Travis was handcuffed and placed in the patrol car, he was no longer within reaching distance of the passenger compartment, which eliminated the officer safety and evidence destruction rationale that originally justified searches incident to arrest. More importantly, a traffic control device violation is generally proven by the officer's observation of the driving conduct and the existence of the traffic control device itself, which means there is rarely a reason to believe that a citizen's vehicle contains evidence of that particular offense. When the offense of arrest does not generate discoverable evidence inside the car and the arrestee cannot access the passenger compartment, well, then the Gant ruling treats the search as unreasonable, unless another exception to the warrant requirement applies. The only other warrant exception that could conceivably apply to this encounter is a so-called inventory search due to the fact that Officer Victorious intended to have Travis's car towed. Inventory searches are viewed differently from investigative searches because they are justified as a caretaking function designed to protect property, protect officers from claims, and address safety concerns. In the 1976 Supreme Court case of South Dakota versus Opperman, the Supreme Court held that not only are inventory searches themselves considered constitutional, but any illegal items found during a lawful inventory search are not subject to constitutional protection. However, in the 1990 case of Florida versus Wells, the court made clear that an inventory search cannot be untethered from policy, particularly when it comes to opening closed containers, because the absence of meaningful standards turns the inventory into an exercise of pure discretion. As shown in the body cam footage, the officers entered areas of the vehicle that were not within Travis's immediate control, including the back seat and floorboard, but did not remove any items from the vehicle or appear to inventory anything inside the vehicle. The tow receipt from the police department does not note any itemized list of anything that was inventoried from the vehicle, and it ambiguously reads, and I'm quoting here, "Item all over." It is unclear which Fourth Amendment exception, if any, the officers assumed that they were operating under, but it does not appear as though they would qualify for the exceptions that would typically apply to the facts of this encounter. After completing the search with their body cams muted the entire time, Officer Victorious returns to the patrol car to speak to Travis.
Hey, your phone fell on the side, so we have to find it, okay? I stopped the video camera for you so it wasn't recording the whole time, but everything's recorded.
The officer returns and tries to explain the situation, but the damage has already been done. The driver has been arrested, and the consequences are now real.
Because if we keep the car key with you, they're going to charge you extra for the tow. So we're going to leave your car key with them. All your other keys are going to come with you. Okay? Sorry, sir?
Yeah, roll up the window.
Yeah, well, I mean, they're gonna close all that up before they tow it.
Well.
Thank you, sir.
You know, you didn't have AC really going?
Yes, sir.
You left me in a hot vehicle. Texas.
You feel it?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do.
I'll turn that up.
Travis was transported to jail where he was initially booked for disregarding a traffic control device. In his official report, Officer Victorious neglected to clarify what exactly led to Travis's arrest, and the report simply reads, Travis was placed under arrest for disregarding a traffic control device. After completing the booking process and spending just over 2 hours in jail, the supervisor on shift, Sergeant Boyd, reviewed the body camera footage of the arrest and determined that the arrest was invalid. Sergeant Boyd immediately requested to have the charges against Travis dropped, released him from the jail, and then returned his property.
They dropped all charges and then released me because obviously nothing was actual on camera. I'm sitting here with Sergeant Boyd. I'm outside.
Okay.
You can pick up your car tonight between 9 and 9:30 p.m.
Okay.
If you don't make it there by 9:30, they won't have anyone there to
Right.
release it to you. Otherwise, 8 to 5 tomorrow. Okay?
Yeah.
Answer that question.
Where did you come from?
I'm a patrol supervisor, so I have to review.
But then everything changes. A supervisor reviews the footage and quickly realizes something is wrong. The charges are dropped and the driver is released.
And I know you don't.
He followed me with every intention of arrest, man.
I don't want to, make any excuses for you because, at the end of the day, I agree that we messed up. So, but cops aren't perfect. That's why we have checks and balances. That's why a supervisor has to review the stuff.
Why we have civil rights.
I agree.
After being released from jail, Travis, along with Sergeant Boyd, waited in the jail parking lot for Travis's ride, and he left the scene without further incident. It was later learned that Officer Victorious added a supplement to his report explicitly noting that Travis's action did not constitute a violation of the Texas Traffic Code, and that a citation dismissal form would be completed. Following the encounter, Travis submitted a public records request for the body and dash camera footage of the incident, and went on to file a pro se lawsuit against the city of North Richland Hills, the North Richland Hills Police Department, the North Richland Hills Jail, and officers Victorious and Burks. The lawsuit was filed just over a month after the interaction occurred, and it includes allegations of unlawful seizure, false arrest, false imprisonment, denial of medical care, and several other constitutional and statutory violations. As of the date of writing this episode, Travis's lawsuit remains pending. Overall, Officer Victorious gets an F for effectuating a totally unnecessary and...
The department admits a mistake, a rare moment where accountability actually happens. But that doesn't undo what already took place.
and punitive attitude throughout the encounter. It is glaringly obvious that this traffic stop should have ended with a citation and release. An Officer Victorious effectuated what could arguably be reduced to a retaliatory arrest. Travis's request for the officer's name and badge number was a basic accountability question. An Officer Victorious reacted as though it was a challenge that needed to be shut down, and his condescending demeanor was repeatedly on display in how he spoke to Travis, including his fixation on control language about Travis not being free to leave, and his willingness to threaten additional charges if Travis attempted to end the encounter on his own terms. The net effect was an encounter that felt less like traffic enforcement and more like punishment for a citizen who was recording and refusing to be deferential. The arrest decision was the point where Officer Victorious's judgment became indefensible. As discussed earlier in the video, Texas law can authorize a warrantless arrest for certain traffic offenses committed in an officer's presence, and the Fourth Amendment does not categorically prohibit a custodial arrest for a fine-only offense when probable cause exists. That technical authority does not excuse using the most intrusive option available when there was no apparent investigatory objective, no safety issue, and no need to take Travis into custody to resolve the alleged offense. The legal framework discussed earlier also emphasized that Texas traffic enforcement is generally structured around a notice to appear process for routine misdemeanors, and the department's own policy discouraged custodial arrests for Class C misdemeanor conduct when no greater legal objective existed. Nothing in the video suggested that any greater objective existed here, and Officer Victorious's insistence on a custodial arrest read like retaliation for Travis's tone, not an enforcement decision shaped by necessity. Furthermore, after Travis was handcuffed and secured in the patrol car, Officer Victorious and Officer Burks
The officer's actions are now under scrutiny, and serious questions are being raised about judgment, policy, and intent, because this was never supposed to go this far.
There's no reasonable basis to believe that the car contains evidence of the offense of arrest, and a traffic control device violation is typically proven through the officer's observation of driving conduct and roadway markings. The search activity shown on camera did not resemble a standardized inventory process, as the officers entered areas of the vehicle without any visible effort to document or catalog property consistent with the caretaking inventory function. It is important to note that this was an instance where the department's own accountability mechanisms served their purpose and acted quickly to resolve the issue. Now, while this fact by no means excuses what happened to Travis, it does show a level of accountability and urgency that is not typical of other departments. Nonetheless, this interaction highlights how quickly discretionary authority can become an abuse of authority when an officer treats a citizen's attitude and recording as justification to escalate, instead of grounding enforcement decisions in legitimate legitimate objectives and measured professionalism. Now, as for Travis, he gets an A-, because although he could have invoked his right to silence more tactfully, he remained calm and collected throughout the encounter, complied with.
In the end, this case highlights a powerful reality. Authority without control can quickly become abuse. And sometimes, the real justice happens after the encounter is already over.
He believed was unjustified, and he did so even after it became blatantly obvious that the officers were not interested in resolving the encounter through the least intrusive means available. He repeatedly asked clarifying questions about whether he was free to go. He disputed the basis for the stop and the arrest verbally rather than physically, and he complied with instructions during the arrest and transport, despite expressing that he viewed the situation as retaliatory. The primary issue with Travis's conduct was not his demeanor, but his decision to argue legal principles in real time with an officer who was already exercising control in a punitive way. It is also important to note that several of his assertions about legal standards were inaccurate, including the notion that the officer had a fixed time window to complete the stop, and the suggestion that a detention concept only applies at the arrest stage. Those kinds of claims very rarely improve a driver's legal standing in the moment, and they tend to expand the conversation in a way that gives an irritated officer more openings to prolong the encounter, escalate the tone, or justify additional steps that would not have occurred if the driver had kept the exchange minimal. Travis spoke too often and missed the simplest and most practical constitutional protection available to him, which was to invoke his right to remain silent once he had clearly communicated that he disagreed with the officer's actions. He did not need to persuade Officer Victorious on the roadside, and continuing to banter after the decision to arrest had already been made served no practical purpose. That said, Travis still did what most citizens do not do after a bad encounter. He obtained and released the footage and pursued accountability through formal legal channels, rather than pursuing accountability through a roadside win. This interaction highlights how a citizen can preserve their safety and credibility through calm compliance and proper follow-up, while still improving their position by avoiding roadside legal debates and relying more heavily on disciplined silence.